Sometimes a single knock on the wrong door at the wrong hour can change a life forever. Tonight's story begins with a little girl carrying a bag of oranges, a desperate wish, and a father who's running out of time. She only wanted to help him. She never expected the door she chose to open into a world she never imagined. A silent mansion, a wealthy woman with eyes full of secrets, and a question no child should ever have to ask. Stay with me, because what happens next is a reminder that even the smallest moments can uncover the biggest truths. And sometimes fate has been waiting for us longer than we think. Poor girl asks billionaire heiress, "Why is my mom's photo in your mansion?" Then everything changes. The heat that afternoon pressed against 9-year-old Mary Cole like a heavy hand. The pavement under her thin sneakers felt almost alive, pulsing with the summer sun's burn. Every step made her wince, but she kept walking, tightening her grip on the overstuffed canvas bag of oranges cutting into her palms. Inside her head, a single thought looped like a stubborn echo. I have to buy Dad's medicine today. No matter what. She could hear her father's coughing even now. Not imagine it, hear it. The rasp, the break, the way he sucked air between gasps as if trying to hide how much it hurt. Memories of that morning haunted her in waves, him hunched over their old mattress, the springs creaking under his trembling weight, one hand clutching his chest, the other pushing the bag of oranges toward her. His voice had been barely above a whisper, warm but strained. "Sell these, sweetheart. Just enough for the medicine. You can do it." She remembered the sound of his breathing more than his words. The wheeze, the hollow effort, the silence that followed too long and too frightening. Mary swallowed hard and pressed on. Yard after yard, tree after tree, house after house. She knocked and knocked, each knock a small plea. "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like to buy some oranges? They're really sweet." Some doors never opened. Others cracked open only to slam shut the moment they saw a scrawny girl with tangled hair and dirt on her socks. Those moments came with quick, sharp sounds, the snap of a lock, the click of a deadbolt, the heavy thud of rejection. Still, she kept going. Her father had always taught her, when life gets hard, kiddo, you walk toward it, not away. By the time she reached the wealthiest street in the neighborhood, her legs were shaking. The bag felt heavier, the air quieter. Too quiet. That was when she saw it. A mansion, not just big massive, black iron gates, high stone pillars. A long driveway leading into silence so thick it made her skin prickle. The place wasn't welcoming the way she imagined rich homes would be. She didn't hear kids laughing or a TV running. No gardener humming. No footsteps. Just one thing, the faint buzz of cicadas in the distant trees and her own uneven breathing. Mary hesitated. This wasn't the kind of house where people opened the door for a child with a bag of fruit. She knew that, but she also knew her father's cough. She stepped forward and pressed the gate's small intercom button. A short, cold beep echoed back. Seconds passed, then a woman's voice, deep, steady, and sharp, came through the speaker. "Who is it?" Mary's throat tightened. I'm Mary. I'm just selling oranges. I need to buy medicine for my dad." Silence. Long silence. So long, Mary wondered if the woman had walked away. Then click. The iron gate unlocked. Mary's heart jumped. She pushed through the opening slowly, almost afraid the gate might close on her again. At the end of the driveway stood a woman, elegant, tall, wrapped in the quiet authority of someone who signed checks with the power other people feared. Alexandra Vale, 38 years old, billionaire heiress, CEO. A woman carved by the world into something sharp. She didn't say anything at first. She just studied Mary with eyes that seemed to pierce straight through the warm afternoon air. Her heels clicked against the marble threshold, slow measured like the beat of a judge's gavel. Mary felt tiny in front of her, like someone had placed a wildflower in a room full of polished stone. Alexandra finally spoke. "How old are you?" 9 Mary whispered. "What's your father's condition?" "He's sick. His medicine ran out yesterday. Another pause. The air between them felt as still as the house behind Alexandra, so still Mary wondered if this woman ever laughed, ever smiled. Then something changed. Barely. But Mary caught it. A flicker. A tremble. Something like recognition or maybe pain passed through Alexandra's expression so quickly Mary thought she imagined it. The CEO blinked once, steadying herself, and opened the door wider. "Come in. I'll buy the oranges." Mary stepped inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, the temperature felt cooler, not cold, but empty. The kind of silence that made her ears ring because there was nothing else to fill them. No music, no voices, not even the hum of a television in another room. Just her soft footsteps and the faint echo of Alexandra's heels leading her across the marble floor. Mary's heartbeat grew louder in her own ears. The house was beautiful, but not alive. Everything felt arranged, perfect, untouched, polished surfaces, distant ceilings, wide rooms without warmth. She clutched her orange bag tighter. She didn't belong here, and she knew it. But she had come anyway for her dad. Alexandra motioned toward a grand hallway. "Wait here. I'll get some water." Mary nodded and sat carefully at the edge of a large chair, trying not to let her feet touch anything. She listened to the fading rhythm of Alexandra's heels, each step quieter, each echo swallowed by the mansion's emptiness. Left alone, she whispered to herself, barely audible. Dad would have filled this whole place with music or jokes. Her gaze drifted around the room, and then froze. A wooden shelf near the staircase, a single golden frame sitting on it. Mary felt her heartbeat shift, one beat missed another, stumbled. Something about that woman in the photo. She stood up, slowly. The floor under her shoes gave a muted thud. Her breath grew louder in her ears. She reached the frame and lifted it with trembling hands just as something inside her chest dropped. She knew that face. She knew it. The soft smile. The gentle curve of her eyes. The warmth that seemed to radiate through time. It was her mother. The mother she'd never met. The mother her father told her had died the day she was born. Her hands shook. She fumbled for her father's old phone in her pocket, swiping to the one worn-out photo she had stared at since she was little. She held the phone beside the frame, side by side. Same woman, same dress, same day. Her voice cracked into the stillness. "Mom." A soft sound broke behind her, a sharp inhale, a rattling tremor. Mary turned. Alexandra stood in the doorway, tray in hand, water glasses, trembling eyes wide with something raw and shaken. Her voice emerged barely above a breath. "Why do you have that picture?" For a heartbeat, everything in the mansion turned still. No footsteps, no echoing hum from some distant room. Just the trembling clink of glass on the metal tray in Alexandra Vale's hands, an unsteady sound that didn't belong to a woman known for control. Mary froze, clutching the framed photo in one hand and her father's old phone in the other. The air around her felt heavy, thick, as if the house itself held its breath. Alexandra set the tray down on a side table with a soft, uneven thud. Her voice, usually polished and cool, came out low, almost fragile. "Why?" "Do you have that picture?" Mary swallowed. Her throat felt tight. She looked from the frame to the woman in front of her, unsure which version of truth she was supposed to believe. "It's my mom," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "My dad said it's the only picture we have of her." The words seemed to strike Alexandra like a physical blow. Her breath caught, her shoulders stiffened. For a second, she closed her eyes as if bracing for something sharp and long buried. She stepped closer, slowly. The faint click of her heels was no longer authoritative, it sounded almost hesitant. "Let me see the phone," she said. Mary hesitated, drawing the device closer to her chest. She didn't know this woman, didn't know whether she was dangerous or kind, or something else entirely, but Alexandra's expression wasn't angry. It wasn't even cold. It was shaken. "It's okay," Alexandra murmured, lowering her voice to something softer, steadier. I won't take it from you. I just need to see. Mary extended the phone with trembling fingers. Alexandra took it gingerly as if it were made of thin glass. When her eyes landed on the photo, something inside her seemed to collapse inward. She lifted her other hand, covering her mouth, steadying herself against the weight of recognition. It was the exact same image. Same smile, same light. Same version of herself from 10 years ago before everything shattered. Her voice cracked. Where did your dad get this? Mary blinked, confused. He said, It was the last picture he had of Mom. He always kept it on his phone so I could remember her. Alexandra stared at the girl, the frame still shaking faintly in Mary's small hands. And slowly, painfully slowly, she turned toward the photo shelf behind the child. She'd kept that framed picture untouched for a decade. Every house she moved into, every office she worked late, and every empty night she tried to outrun her regrets. That frame followed her. It was the only thing she never boxed away. A quiet thought pulsed through her mind as she studied Mary's face, her nose, her eyebrows. Something about the way her eyes glistened when she was scared. Daniel, did you know? But she didn't speak the thought aloud. Not yet. She couldn't trust her own voice. Mary shifted, hugging the frame to her chest. Her breathing quickened. She didn't know if she should apologize, run, or stand her ground. Alexandra sensed it. She stepped back, giving Mary space. I'm not upset, she said softly. I promise. I'm just surprised. Mary lowered her gaze. I didn't mean to ignore you. I saw the picture and you recognized her, Alexandra finished. Mary nodded. Yes, ma'am. She looks just like the picture my dad showed me. Another heavy beat of silence. Alexandra walked to the golden frame on the shelf. Her fingertips brushed the ornate edges, not lovingly, but like someone revisiting a wound they never allowed to heal. This photo was taken. She started, then stopped, swallowing hard. It was taken a long time ago. Mary didn't know why her voice needed to break like that, or why her hands trembled when she placed the framed picture beside the one on the phone. Side by side, they were identical. Mary stepped closer. She didn't touch the CEO, but she watched her carefully, curious and scared. You knew her? Alexandra's chest rose and fell, the breath unsteady. Yes, she whispered. I knew her. The house still held its cold silence, but beneath it something new surfaced, an emotional tremor neither of them knew how to hold. Alexandra finally tore her gaze away, turning toward the hallway. Sit down, sweetheart, she murmured. I'll make you something to eat. Mary blinked. She had not expected that. She wasn't sure the woman had ever made anything to eat for anyone, but she followed, sitting quietly on the edge of the velvet chair. She listened to Alexandra's footsteps fade into the kitchen, the rhythm softer now, unsteady. The clatter of a glass, the rustle of a wrapper, the slow, deliberate movements of someone trying to keep their hands from shaking. Mary let her gaze wander again. Not out of nosiness, she was simply trying to make sense of the room. Big paintings, tall ceilings, everything expensive. But nothing personal. No pictures of family, no memories on display, no laughter marks on the walls the way their apartment had. Her inner voice whispered, "Rich doesn't mean happy." Alexandra returned a minute later with a tray water and a small plate of store-bought cookies. She set them down, but didn't sit. She stayed standing, hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Tell me something," she said, voice low. She pointed toward the old phone lying on the table. "That picture. Who took it?" My dad, Mary, replied. He said, "She was laughing. He always tells me that part." Alexandra closed her eyes, the words hitting her like a forgotten melody. She had laughed that day. Really laughed. Daniel had teased her about something silly. They'd taken the picture right before everything collapsed. Her heartbeat thudded painfully in her ears. And Mary continued softly, "My dad said my mom was kind. He said she was smart. And her voice cracked. She swallowed. He said she loved me very much. Before—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Alexandra's breath faltered. Her fingers reached for the back of the velvet chair to steady her weight. She finally looked straight at Mary, really looked, and something inside her chest splintered. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "why do you have this picture? Who told you she's your mom?" Mary stiffened. She didn't understand the tremor beneath those words, but she answered honestly. "My dad," she said. "He said she died when I was born." Alexandra's world tilted so violently she stepped back without meaning to. Her voice faltered. The room spun. Her heartbeat roared. She stared at the girl, those eyes, that small, determined chin, and a horrifying, beautiful, impossible possibility filled her. Could it be? Before she could ask anything more, Mary hugged the picture frame to her chest, holding it as if afraid someone might rip it away. Alexandra's voice cracked, barely audible, almost pleading. "Why do you have that photo? Where did it come from?" Mary clutched it tighter. "It came from our home," she said softly. "It's the only picture we have of my mother." Alexandra's breath broke, her hand lifted to her mouth as if to hold in a cry. The golden-framed photo on the shelf, the worn photo on the old phone. The little girl standing before her. The world she had spent 10 years building began to crumble. The air in the mansion felt different now, denser charged, as if the truth itself had taken shape and stood between them. Alexandra Vale didn't move. She couldn't. Her pulse thudded hard in her ears, drowning out everything except the soft, uneven breaths coming from the little girl clutching that golden frame. She forced herself to steady her voice. "Sweetheart," she murmured, "I need you to tell me. Where did you get that photo, the picture on your phone, who gave it to you?" Mary tightened her hold on the frame knuckles, whitening. "My dad," she said. He gave it to me because it's all we have of Mom." The last word hit Alexandra like a blow to the ribs. Mom. Her. Mary was talking about her. Alexandra felt her knees threaten to buckle. She stepped closer but stopped halfway, afraid she would scare the girl. "Your mother," she repeated quietly, tasting the word like something foreign. What was her name?" Mary blinked. "My dad never talks about her name much. He just calls her your mom. But he said she died when I was born." A sharp, involuntary breath escaped Alexandra's lips, almost a gasp. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying the rush of heat rising from old wounds she thought had turned numb. "That's impossible," she whispered. Her voice shook, her hands shook, her entire body shook. Mary's brows pinched in confusion. "Ma'am, are you okay?" No, she wasn't. Nothing about this was okay. She bent down, slightly lowering herself to Mary's eye level. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you some questions. Very important questions. Can you answer them honestly for me?" Mary nodded slowly, her fingers still wrapped protectively around the photograph. "What's your name?" Alexandra asked. "Mary Cole." The surname hit Alexandra's stomach like ice. Cole. Daniel Cole. Her Daniel. Her voice tightened, trembling around the next question. "How old are you?" "Almost 10. 10. Almost 10. The number made her breath hitch. That was the age her own baby would have been if her mother's words had been true. She swallowed hard the next question, catching in her throat. "Your father's name. What is it, Daniel Cole?" There it was, the final thread snapping. Alexandra staggered back, one hand gripping the side of a marble table. Her eyes stung, her vision blurred. Daniel. Her Daniel. The man she had loved with everything she had. The man her mother claimed had abandoned her. The man she was told had run away after she lost the baby. The memory slammed into her with painful clarity the night her mother and a lawyer cornered her in the hospital, the cold voice telling her the baby hadn't survived the threat that Daniel had vanished, proving he never cared. Alexandra had cried until she couldn't breathe. She never saw Daniel again. But here was Mary, 9 years old, carrying that photo, his last name, her face. Alexandra whispered, "It can't be. It can't be." Mary stepped back uncertainly, eyes wide. Did I say something wrong?" "No," Alexandra answered quickly, shaking her head. "No, sweetheart, you didn't. You didn't do anything wrong." She knelt slowly, unsteadily, and placed her hands on her thighs to keep them from shaking. "That picture," she said, pointing at the frame Mary held, "was taken 10 years ago. Your dad, Daniel. He took that picture." Mary frowned slightly. "That's what he said too." A tremor raced through Alexandra. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't losing her mind. Every piece fit. Her mother had lied to her. Lied to Daniel. Stolen 10 years of a child's life. Her child's life. Alexandra's voice came out rough, unfiltered. "Sweetheart, your father, is he okay?" Mary shook her head, fear returning to her expression. "He's really sick. That's why I came out to sell oranges. I had to get money for his medicine." Alexandra shut her eyes, pain slicing through her. Daniel, sick, alone, raising a child alone. A child Alexandra didn't even know was hers. Guilt swept through her, deep, overwhelming, unbearable. "Mary," she breathed, leaning in. "I need your dad's address. I need to see him. Please. Right now." Mary hesitated, unsure. She clutched the frame tighter. "Can I trust you?" she whispered. The question pierced straight to Alexandra's core. For 10 years she hadn't been allowed to choose anything. Every truth she lived had been handed to her, shaped, twisted, polished by her mother's influence. But here, kneeling before a child, trembling with hope and fear, Alexandra felt something shift. She answered softly, "I think you're the first person in a very long time who deserves the truth from me." Mary looked into her eyes, really looked, and something inside her softened. She reached into her small canvas bag and pulled out a crumpled scrap of paper. "My dad wrote down our address in case I got lost," she murmured. She handed it to Alexandra. The heiress unfolded it with careful hands. A cheap apartment number. A street name from a part of town she'd never stepped foot in. She stood, wiped her palms against her slacks, and walked to a small drawer. Inside, she found an envelope of cash she kept for emergencies, never imagining this would be one. She pressed it into Mary's hands. "Take this. Buy your dad's medicine. Buy food. And take all the oranges back home. I'll pay for all of them." Mary gasped. "That's too much." "No," Alexandra cut in softly. "It's not enough." She scribbled her phone number and address on a card and slipped it into the girl's pocket. "Tell your father," she said, her voice trembling, "that Alexandra wants to see him. As soon as he's able." Mary nodded slowly, the weight of everything sinking in. She didn't know why this woman's eyes were filled with tears. She didn't know why the air around them felt thick with things neither understood yet. She didn't know why the mansion suddenly felt less empty and more dangerous. But she knew something huge was happening, something that could break everything, or fix everything. As Mary stepped out the front door with her bag of oranges and the envelope of cash, she turned back one last time. The mansion loomed silent behind her, but inside something had cracked open. A question pulsed in her chest. If Mom is in that picture, then who is this woman to me? The hallway of the old apartment building smelled faintly of damp concrete and cheap disinfectant, an odor Mary Cole knew too well. She ran up the stairs 2 at a time, her canvas bag bouncing against her hip, the envelope of money held tight against her chest. Each breath she drew felt like it burned, but she didn't slow down. Dad needed his medicine. Dad needed her. By the time she pushed open the warped wooden door of their little room, Daniel Cole was already trying to sit up. A harsh, rattling cough tore from his chest, deep scraping desperate. The sound filled the cramped space like a warning siren. Dad Mary rushed toward him, nearly dropping everything. "I got the medicine. I got it. Hold on, okay?" Daniel forced a weak smile, the kind that tried to reassure her even while he fought for air. "You did good, sweetheart," he rasped. "Your old man's tougher than he looks." But Mary could hear the truth in the pauses between his words. The weakness, the strain, the quiet fear he tried to tuck away. She helped him take the pills, holding the bottle steady with shaking hands. Daniel swallowed hard, wincing, but the moment the medicine hit his tongue, his breathing eased just a bit. "Where'd you get all that money?" he asked softly, nodding toward the envelope. Mary chewed her lip, unsure how to begin. "There was this lady," she said finally. "A really rich one. Big house. She bought all the oranges." Daniel raised a brow, a spark of humor attempting to surface. "Well, maybe you've got a future in sales." But then Mary continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, she had a picture. Of Mom. The same one you have on your phone. Exactly the same." The little room went silent, so silent Daniel's breathing felt too loud, too raw. Slowly, he turned toward the nightstand where his old phone lay charging. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "are you sure?" Mary nodded. 100%. She saw it too, and she cried. Daniel froze. Not in anger, not in disbelief, but in something deeper, something old and buried clawing its way back into the light. He picked up the phone with trembling hands. The familiar photo lit up the cracked screen. "Your mom," he murmured, his voice soft with memory, "was the best thing that ever happened to me. You have her smile, you know that." Mary sat beside him, leaning her head against his arm. "Dad, why would that woman have Mom's picture? Why did she cry?" Daniel closed his eyes. A tremor ran through him, not from illness this time, but from a truth he had tried to bury. He drew a slow breath, the sound ragged. "There's something I never told you, kiddo. Something I didn't think you'd ever need to know." Mary listened. Daniel's voice thinned as he spoke, but his memories came back with painful clarity. 10 years ago. He wasn't always just a janitor. He had worked maintenance in one of the tallest towers in the city owned by the Vale family, and that was where he met her. The young heiress who didn't act like she belonged to that world. "Alexandra," he said quietly. "She used to sneak away from the fancy meetings. She'd sit by the elevator shafts asking me about engine gears, pressure gauges, anything that wasn't about money." Mary's eyes widened. "Dad, the lady today, her name was Alexandra." Daniel's breath stopped, completely. He stared at her. A beat, another. Then he whispered, "What did she look like?" Mary thought for a moment. Strong. Serious. But her eyes looked lonely, and when she saw Mom's picture, she looked like she was breaking inside. Daniel's throat tightened. "Yes," he whispered. "That sounds like her." He leaned back against the wall, the memory flooding in. He told Mary about the nights he and Alexandra talked for hours, the way she laughed, real, unguarded, the way she dreamed of escaping her family's chains. And then, the night everything fell apart. His voice turned hollow. "Her mother came after me, Mary. She said I wasn't good enough, that I used her daughter, that if I didn't leave, she'd have me arrested on charges I couldn't fight." Mary's breath hitched. "But what about the baby?" Daniel's eyes glistened. He held her small hand in his trembling one. "She told me Alexandra didn't want the baby. She told me you were gone, that I needed to disappear before they made an example out of me." Mary covered her mouth. "That's not true," she whispered. Daniel's voice wavered. "I took you and ran Mary. I thought your mother abandoned us. I thought she moved on. I didn't know. I didn't know she'd been lied to, too." Mary's heart pounded. Everything felt upside down like the floor had tilted. "Dad," she said softly, "the lady today. She cried when I said your name. I think she didn't know either." Daniel stared at the floor, shaking his head slowly. God. What did they tell her? A sudden violent cough tore through him. He doubled over, struggling to breathe. Mary grabbed the water, her hands frantic. "Dad, Dad, breathe, breathe, please." He groaned, sliding down until his back hit the wall. That was when they both heard it. A sound in the stairwell. Rushed footsteps. A sharp knock at the apartment door. Mary jumped. Daniel weakly tried to stand but couldn't. The knock came again, firmer this time. Mary ran to the door and pulled it open. Standing there, breathless hair slightly out of place, eyes burning with something fierce, was Alexandra Vale. In her hands a bag of medicine, a fresh inhaler, a stack of hospital paperwork, and something like determination carved into her expression. She didn't wait to be invited in. She stepped across the threshold, her voice shaking. "Where is he?" Mary pointed toward the bed. Alexandra rushed past her, dropping the bag on the table, kneeling beside Daniel as if she'd done it 1,000 times. Daniel stared at her, disbelief and a decade of pain tightening his features. And Alexandra. Her voice broke as she touched his arm. "Daniel," she whispered, "please, look at me." He did, their eyes locked. 10 years of love betrayal. Lies, grief, and unanswered questions crashing into that single moment. The tiny room felt even smaller now, as if the walls themselves sensed the weight of 10 lost years pressing inward. Alexandra knelt beside Daniel, her breath still unsteady, her hands hovering over him as though afraid her touch might shatter the fragile truth hanging between them. Daniel leaned back against the wall, his breathing labored, each inhale a rough drag. He stared at her with eyes that were exhausted, yet burning with something fierce anger, hurt disbelief, all tangled and raw. "Why are you here?" he rasped. It wasn't a welcome. It wasn't gratitude. It was a wound, spoken out loud. Mary hovered near the door, unsure if she should step closer or give them space. She held the medicine bag tightly as though it anchored her in this moment that felt too big, too heavy. Alexandra swallowed hard. Her voice trembled, but she refused to run from the truth. "I came because I saw the picture," she whispered. "The one on your phone. And the one on my shelf. I came because—" Daniel cut her off, bitterness rising like a tide. "Oh, so now you care." He coughed violently, gripping his ribs. "What happened?" "A decade too late isn't too late anymore." His words were sharp, but beneath them was an ache, a fracture that had never healed. Alexandra felt the sting, but she didn't retreat. For once, she didn't hide behind pride or composure. "I didn't know," she said, voice cracking on every syllable. "I didn't know anything. I wasn't told anything. I thought," she faltered, covering her mouth as tears gathered. "I thought our baby died, Daniel." The silence that followed was thicker than grief. Daniel's expression changed just slightly. His shoulders tensed, then dropped as if part of him wanted to reject her words. But another part recognized the truth in her trembling voice. "I was told you didn't want the baby," he murmured, disbelief threading through his tone. "That you told them to get rid of me. That you moved on. They said you wanted nothing to do with us." His voice cracked, the memory still bleeding. Alexandra pressed a shaking hand to her chest. "Oh, God. Daniel, no. I never said that. Not once. I fought," her voice broke fully. "I fought for you." Hearing that shattered something fragile inside him. But pain was a stubborn thing. It didn't leave without a fight. He grit his teeth. "Your mother threatened me. She said she'd have me arrested. Said I was dirt. Said I tricked her daughter." Alexandra felt her jaw stiffen. That was exactly what her mother had always wanted the world to believe, that control equaled love and fear was the safest leash. "I was drugged," Alexandra whispered. The words poured from her like confession. She said I needed sedatives. I was in the hospital and they gave me forms to sign papers I could barely see. I woke up and they told me you were gone, that you ran away as soon as you heard the baby didn't make it." Daniel's breath stopped. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the devastation in her eyes. "My God," he whispered. "We were both lied to." The truth settled over them like dust, soft, choking, unavoidable. Two people who had once clung to each other torn apart by a woman whose love was a cage, not a home. Mary stepped forward quietly. Her small voice filled the room with something gentler. "So, you didn't leave Dad," she said softly to Alexandra. "And Dad, you didn't leave her." Daniel closed his eyes. Tears slipped down Alexandra's cheeks. "I never would have left," he said, voice shaking. "I loved you." Alexandra let out a quiet, broken sound. "I never stopped loving you." The room pulsed with their shared ache, 10 years of silence unraveling all at once. But reality returned like a cold wind. Daniel's cough struck again, harsh and uncontrollable. He winced, gripping the edge of the bed as his body shook. Alexandra instinctively reached out, steadying him with both hands. "You're burning up," she whispered. "You're breathing. Daniel, you can't stay like this. You need a hospital." He turned his face away. "I'm fine." "You're not," she insisted, her voice sharp with fear. "You're barely breathing." Mary's voice trembled as she added, "Dad, please." But Daniel's pride flared. "I don't need her help," he muttered. "I don't need Vale money saving me." Alexandra froze. The name struck her like a lash. For a moment she almost withdrew her hand, but then she saw Mary, tiny, trembling, terrified of losing the only parent she'd ever known, and Alexandra's heart broke in a new place. She knelt closer, lowering her voice to something steady and honest. "I'm not here to throw money at you," she said. "I'm here because you and Mary deserve better than what was stolen from you. I'm here because we have a truth to face, and I don't want to face it without you." Daniel's breath hitched. He wanted to believe her. He really did. But belief required trust, and trust was a scar that hadn't healed yet. Then Mary placed her small hand over his. "Dad," she whispered, voice quivering. "I don't care who's right or wrong. I just want you to live." Those words, spoken with the purest kind of love, broke through every last shard of pride. Daniel slumped, slightly defeated by exhaustion and truth. Alexandra moved fast. She pulled out her phone, dialing the hospital. Her voice shook but remained firm. "I need an ambulance. Now." Daniel didn't argue this time. He didn't have the strength. Instead, he let his head rest against the wall, eyes, half-closed chest, rising and falling in weak, uneven breaths. Mary clung to his arm. Alexandra sat on his other side, gripping his hand as if grounding him. Within minutes, the room filled with hurried footsteps, medical voices, the rustle of gloves and equipment. The last thing Daniel heard was the doctor's urgent tone as they lifted him onto the stretcher. "He's in severe respiratory distress. We need to move fast." The world blurred. Mary cried. Alexandra held both of them as if her life depended on it. And then, the ambulance siren had long faded, but Mary could still hear it pulsing inside her chest as she sat in the hospital hallway, knees pulled to her chest, fingers gripping the last orange from her canvas bag as if it were a lifeline. She hadn't let go of it since they arrived. To her, the orange still smelled like home, like the only thing she could control in a world suddenly spinning too fast. Alexandra sat beside her, elbows on her knees, hands clasped so tightly the veins stood out. For the first time in her polished, meticulously managed life, she had no script, no strategy, no wall to hide behind. All she had was fear, real fear for a man she once loved and a child she never knew she had. The doctor pushed through the double doors, the faint rustle of his scrubs announcing his arrival. "How is he?" Alexandra blurted before he even stopped walking. The doctor exhaled sharply. "He's stable for now. Severe lung infection, dehydration, and exhaustion. It'll take a few days, but he should recover if he rests." Mary's shoulders sagged in relief, a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours finally escaping. Alexandra closed her eyes and whispered something that sounded like, "Thank God." But then the doctor hesitated. "There's something else I need to bring up." Alexandra straightened instantly. "What is it?" The doctor glanced between the two of them, lowering his voice. "For Mary's legal protection, and for Mr. Cole's, we recommend establishing a formal record of parentage. A DNA test. This will help prevent future disputes, especially since—" He paused. "Since Miss Vale is a public figure." Mary blinked. "DNA? What's that mean?" The doctor knelt gently in front of her. "It's a simple test to show who your biological parents are, sweetheart. Just a cotton swab in your cheek. Nothing scary." Mary looked confused. "But I know who my dad is." The doctor smiled kindly. "Yes, but having it on paper keeps you safe." Alexandra swallowed hard. "Do it," she said quietly, though her voice trembled. "We need the truth on record." Mary turned to Daniel's room window, her small hands pressed to the glass. "Can he do it too, Dad?" "Of course," the doctor said. "He'll barely feel a thing." He stood. "I'll bring the test kits." When he left, Mary slowly lowered the orange into her bag and sat beside Alexandra again. "If we do this," she whispered, "will it help?" Dad Alexandra nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. It protects him and you." Mary looked up at her. "Will it protect you too?" The question hit harder than the doctor's news. Alexandra's voice softened, turned inward. "I think for the first time it might." That night, sleep avoided both of them. Alexandra paced the hallway, heels silent on the polished floor, her mind replaying every moment, every choice, every lie she'd believed, every truth she'd been denied. Her inner voice repeated the same question. What kind of mother loses her child for 10 years and never knows? But then another voice answered her, quiet, gentle, shaped by the man lying behind the ICU doors. The kind of mother who was lied to. The kind who still has a chance to fight for her child now. In the waiting chair, Mary drifted half asleep, her head slipping sideways until it rested against Alexandra's arm. The tiny weight startled her, but then something inside Alexandra softened, melted. She carefully adjusted her arm so Mary wouldn't slip, and for a moment it felt like fate giving her a tiny preview of everything she'd lost, and everything she still might have. The next morning, the DNA samples were taken, quick swabs for Daniel, for Mary, and for Alexandra. The doctor assured them the results would return in 3 days. 3 long days. During those days, a rhythm formed. Alexandra stayed from morning until night, sometimes silent, sometimes talking with Mary about school, or how she'd learned to sell oranges, or how she memorized bus routes in case she got lost on errands. Each story was a dagger, small, quiet, coated in sweetness but piercing straight into Alexandra's chest. I should have been there. I should have known. I should have protected you both. Inside the ICU, Daniel regained color and breath little by little. When he finally opened his eyes fully, Mary rushed into the room, her small voice bright with relief. Dad. You scared me. Daniel pulled her into a gentle hug, though he winced at the pressure. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. Then his gaze shifted to Alexandra, who lingered near the doorway with her arms folded tightly. Their eyes met, and the air changed heavy with history. Neither could rewrite, filled with questions neither knew how to ask yet. Daniel spoke first. You didn't have to stay. Alexandra stepped in, closing the door behind her. I know, she whispered, but I wanted to. He looked away, jaw tightening. Being near her hurt, but being without her hurt more. Mary, sensing the shift, climbed onto the bed and curled beside him. Are you mad at her? Dad? The question cut deep. Daniel looked at his daughter, this brilliant, brave child who deserved a world free of bitterness. Sweetheart, he said gently, I'm not mad. I'm confused and tired and trying to understand. Alexandra stepped closer. "Daniel," she said softly, "I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I'm here because I want to help clean them. I want to face this truth with you, with both of you." Daniel's gaze softened. Not trust, not forgiveness, but the beginning of a bridge. "All right," he murmured. "Let's take things one step at a time." 3 evenings passed like that, quietly, cautiously, beautifully. For the first time, the 3 of them shared space. Stories, silences that didn't feel empty. Alexandra even learned the tiny habits Mary had inherited from Daniel, flicking her fingers when nervous, humming when thinking, leaning her head to one side when listening hard. Every detail was a new stab of wonder. She's mine. She's ours. On the 3rd night, as the sun dipped beyond the hospital windows, the doctor walked in, holding a sealed envelope. The sound of the door closing echoed like the drum roll of fate. "The results are in," he said, setting the envelope on the tray table. "I think the 3 of you should read this together." Alexandra's pulse hammered. Daniel exhaled shakily. Mary looked between them wide-eyed and hopeful. The envelope sat there quiet, unassuming, impossibly heavy. Alexandra reached for it with trembling fingers. The world held its breath. The envelope sat on the little rolling tray like something alive, something that breathed and pulsed, something that dared all 3 of them to open it. The room around them hummed with the muted beeps of medical monitors and the distant murmur of nurses changing shifts. But inside the 4 walls of Daniel's hospital room, time held perfectly still. Alexandra's hand hovered above the envelope. Daniel watched her breathing, slowly, cautiously, as if a sudden movement might shatter the fragile balance they had finally begun to build. Mary sat between them, her small hands clutching the hem of her shirt, her eyes wide, hopeful, afraid. Finally, Alexandra whispered, "We open it together." Daniel nodded. Mary nodded too, though her chin trembled. With trembling fingers, Alexandra slid her thumb beneath the flap and broke the seal. The soft, tearing sound felt impossibly loud. She unfolded the paper slowly, carefully, the way someone might hold a long-lost relic. Her eyes scanned the top line, then the next. Her breath caught. "What does it say?" Mary asked almost in a whisper. Alexandra swallowed hard. Her voice shook as she read aloud, "Probability of parentage 99.9%. Daniel closed his eyes. Mary looked confused. "So, that means—" Alexandra laughed through a sob that escaped her throat. "It means your dad is your biological father, sweetheart, just like you always knew." Mary exhaled in relief, leaning her head against Daniel's arm. But Alexandra wasn't done. Her fingers tightened on the paper. Her lips pressed together as if she had to force the next words out. "And it also confirms." Her voice cracked. She sucked in a breath. "That I'm your biological mother." Mary blinked once, twice. Then she turned slowly toward Alexandra. Her small eyebrows knitted, her breath quickened, and her eyes glistened in a way that carved another wound into Alexandra's heart. "So," Mary whispered, "you're really my mom." Those words, fragile, soft, trembling, hit harder than any truth Alexandra had ever confronted. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her whole body shaking. "Yes," she breathed. Her voice broke completely. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm your mom." The paper slipped from her fingers and floated to the floor. Mary blinked, fast tears filling her eyes. She looked at Daniel first, as if silently asking permission. He nodded gently, even though his throat bobbed with emotion. Mary turned back to Alexandra, her voice small. Can I call you Mom? But I don't want to lose Dad. I want both." Alexandra let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and wholly love. She leaned forward, opening her arms. "You will never lose your dad," she whispered. "And if you want, you can call me Mom. You can call me whatever feels right. I just want you to be safe and loved." Mary hesitated only a moment before climbing into her arms. Alexandra held her tightly, finally instinctively rocking her in soft, trembling motions. The faint scent of oranges lingered on the girl's shirt, an echo of everything Mary had endured, everything Alexandra had missed. Daniel watched them, eyes, wet heart pounding. He hadn't allowed himself to cry in years, maybe a decade, but seeing Alexandra hold their daughter, something inside him melted open. Mary nestled her head under Alexandra's chin. "I always wanted a mom," she whispered, "but I didn't think I'd ever have one." Alexandra pulled her closer. "You had one all along. She just didn't know where her little girl had gone." The room warmed with the quiet healing sound of their tears, but healing was only the first step. Truth carried consequences. When Mary drifted off to sleep on Daniel's lap, Alexandra and Daniel exchanged a heavy look, the kind that said, "We're not done." Daniel stroked Mary's hair absently. "What now?" he asked, voice low. Alexandra sat at the edge of the bed, posture straight, resolve hardening. "Now," she said, "I face the one person who stole everything from us." Daniel didn't need to ask who. Alexandra continued, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "My mother is the reason we lost 10 years. The reason you raised Mary alone. The reason I lived believing my child died." She drew a sharp breath. "And the reason Mary lived without knowing she had a mother." Daniel nodded slowly. "I don't trust her," he said quietly, "and I'm scared she might try something again, especially now." Alexandra's gaze sharpened CEO steel, mixing with raw maternal fire. "She won't. Not this time." Daniel studied her for a long moment. "You think she'll listen to reason?" "No," Alexandra answered honestly. "But she'll listen to evidence, to lawyers, to the truth, and to the fact that I'm not the same girl she controlled 10 years ago." Daniel rubbed his forehead, still processing everything. "I don't want her anywhere near Mary. Not until we know what she's capable of." Alexandra softened. "I agree. But we need to do this right. If she finds out from someone else, she could twist the narrative. I need to confront her first." Daniel frowned, concern deepening. "That woman is dangerous, Alexandra. She'll threaten you again." Alexandra looked at Mary, sleeping peacefully, finally safe, then back to Daniel. "She can't hurt me anymore," she whispered, "because now I know the truth. And now I have something to fight for." Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Gratitude, fear, and something else, something that felt suspiciously like the remnants of old love stirring awake. He nodded slowly. "Then go tomorrow," he said quietly. "But not alone. Call your lawyer. Take protection. And—" he hesitated. "Be careful, Alex." She inhaled sharply at the old nickname unused for a decade, but somehow still fitting. "I will," she promised. Her phone buzzed, then vibrating in her coat pocket. She pulled it out. Mother 1, missed call. 1 message. She opened the message. "We need to talk. Now. Before you ruin everything." A chill swept over her. Alexandra looked at Daniel, eyes steady but burning. "It begins," she said softly. The Vale estate looked nothing like the home Alexandra had walked out of 10 years ago. Or maybe she was the one who had changed. The iron gates still loomed high, the manicured hedges still sculpted into perfect symmetry. The fountain still whispered against marble bowls, but all of it felt colder now. Sharper, like a monument built to honor control, not family. As her driver pulled up the long driveway, Alexandra pressed a hand against her chest, steadying the storm inside her. She wasn't the frightened girl who once trembled in these halls. She wasn't the obedient daughter who believed every word her mother spoke. She was a woman who had found the truth and a mother who had nearly lost her child. She stepped out of the car. Her heels clicked on the stone walkway, a crisp, assertive rhythm that carried new meaning. Every step forward said, "I am not yours to shape anymore." Inside the mansion, the silence felt heavy. A maid greeted her nervously and led her toward the tea room, the same room Catherine Vale used every time she wanted to scold, persuade, or manipulate. Alexandra inhaled deeply. The faint scent of jasmine tea struck an old memory, her mother brewing it whenever she wanted Alexandra to obey without argument. It used to have a calming effect. Not anymore. She entered the tea room. Catherine Vale sat perfectly composed on a velvet settee posture, regal chin, high one hand curled delicately around a porcelain teacup. She looked every bit the woman who shaped empires with a word and destroyed lives with a whisper. "Alexandra," she said coolly, "I see you still know how to arrive unannounced." Alexandra shut the door behind her. "We need to talk." Catherine's lips curved in something that resembled a smile but carried no warmth. "Oh, I assumed as much after your rather alarming text. Now, tell me, what exactly do you believe you've discovered?" Alexandra slowly approached, refusing to sit. She placed a thick folder on the table. Medical reports, DNA results, photos, hospital admissions papers. Catherine glanced at it, expression unbothered. "And what is this supposed to be?" "The truth," Alexandra said quietly. "For once I'm putting it in front of you. No lawyers, no sedatives, no threats, just truth." Catherine sipped her tea. "You sound dramatic," Alexandra snapped. "You told me my child died, mother." The teacup halted midair. For the first time, Catherine's composure cracked barely. A flicker in her eyes, a stiffening of her jaw. Alexandra stepped closer. "You told me Daniel ran away. You told him I abandoned the baby. You ruined 10 years of our lives." Catherine set the cup down with exaggerated calm. "Lower your voice." "The staff?" "I don't care about the staff." Alexandra's voice broke the raw pain finally rising to the surface. "I care about the daughter you stole from me, the man you tried to destroy, and the lies you fed me until I didn't know what was real anymore." Catherine's face hardened, voice tightening. "I did what I had to do. You were 19, naive, impulsive, blinded by a maintenance worker who wanted your money." Alexandra shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, I was in love," Catherine scoffed. "Love, don't be ridiculous. That boy had nothing to offer. I saved your future. You destroyed my past," Alexandra whispered. Catherine rose to her feet, her presence still commanding, but Alexandra didn't shrink back this time. "You were never meant to raise a child with someone like him," Catherine said. "You were destined for more. And I wasn't going to let one reckless mistake ruin everything." Alexandra's voice softened, but it carried more strength than shouting ever could. "You didn't protect me. You controlled me." Catherine looked away, jaw trembling for just a moment. "Everything I did," she said quietly, "was out of love." "No," Alexandra countered, "it was out of fear. Fear that I'd choose a life you didn't approve of. Fear of losing control. You never asked what I wanted." Catherine's silence was answer enough. Alexandra opened the folder and slid the DNA results across the table. Catherine stared at it longer this time. Her hands trembled just slightly as she read. When she reached the bottom of the page, her composure fractured again. 99.9%, she whispered. "Alexandra, this can't." "It's real," Alexandra said, "and Mary is alive. She has been alive all these years. Daniel raised her alone, in poverty, while I lived in boardrooms and penthouses thinking she was dead." Catherine closed her eyes, breathing unevenly. Alexandra stepped closer, voice trembling but unwavering. "You did this. You crafted lies that stole a decade of motherhood from me, and nearly killed Daniel with the weight of your threats." Catherine's eyes snapped open. "You don't understand. I had to act." "No," Alexandra cut in. "You chose to act. You chose to break us apart. And for what? So your daughter wouldn't fall in love with a man who worked with his hands." Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. Her voice slipped into something quieter, almost brittle. "I didn't want you to repeat my mistakes." Alexandra's breath softened. Your mistakes aren't mine." For the first time in her life, she saw her mother not as a towering figure but as a deeply flawed woman, someone who built walls from fear and called them protection. Mother Alexandra said gently but firmly, "You hurt us, all three of us, and you need to accept that." Catherine's eyes glistened with something she fought fiercely to hide: shame. "So," Catherine whispered, "what happens now?" Alexandra inhaled deeply. "This is your chance to make it right. But I will not let you near Mary until you acknowledge what you've done." Catherine's voice cracked. "And if I refuse," Alexandra stood tall, finally fully, undeniably strong, "then you lose me forever." A long silence followed, heavy, suffocating. Finally, Catherine lowered her gaze. She whispered almost imperceptibly, "I was wrong." Not a perfect apology, not a full one, but the first crack in a lifetime of stone. Alexandra nodded slowly. "Mary asked if she had a grandmother. She said she'd give you a chance if you change." Catherine swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "Do I still have time?" "That depends," Alexandra said, turning toward the door, "on what you do next." As Alexandra stepped out of the tea room, Catherine remained seated, small, shaken, silent. For the first time in decades, she didn't look like a matriarch. She looked like a mother who had finally realized she had something to lose. Daniel Cole had always imagined recovery would feel like climbing a steep hill. Something slow, burdensome, lonely. But when he finally left the hospital a week later, still thin, still coughing lightly but stronger, he found himself walking into something he never expected, a life no longer carried by just 2 heartbeats. When the car pulled up to Alexandra's mansion, Mary was the first to hop out, excitement bubbling in every step she took across the driveway. She looked so small in the wide-open space, a child who had outgrown cramped rooms, dark hallways, and hand-me-down everything. Daniel stepped out more slowly, leaning on the railing, taking in the place with a hesitant breath. He wasn't used to silence this big. He wasn't used to space that didn't smell like mildew or worn carpets. He wasn't used to anything that felt safe. "Take your time," Alexandra said gently, walking beside him. "We're not rushing anything." He nodded, grateful and yet still wrestling with the unfamiliar sting of being helped. Inside, the air was cool and clean, the faint hum of air vents whispering across the high ceilings. Mary's awe echoed through the halls as she sprinted from room to room. "I get my own room. For real, with a real bed and a table. And Dad, it has a window that opens." Daniel huffed a soft laugh. "You hear that, luxury, a window?" Alexandra smiled, a quiet, soft thing he wasn't used to seeing on her. "She picked that room herself. Yesterday. I hope you like it too, Daniel." He didn't answer. Not because he didn't appreciate it, he did. More than she knew. But because part of him felt like an intruder in a life that wasn't his. Inside the kitchen, Alexandra tried to hide her nervousness as she rolled up her sleeves. "I thought maybe I could cook tonight. Something simple. Something you two like." The confession came out awkward and unpolished, and Daniel almost smiled at how human she suddenly looked, far from the marble-cold CEO image she carried in public. "You cook now," he teased lightly. "Not well," Alexandra admitted. "Mary supervised yesterday so the house didn't burn down." Mary popped her head into the kitchen doorway. "I taught her how to use the stove." "She only messed up twice." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Only twice? Impressive." The moment felt easy, warm, disorientingly so. While Alexandra cooked with Mary, chirping directions, Daniel took slow, careful steps through the mansion, touching nothing, observing everything. He paused by the golden-framed photo of Alexandra, 10 years younger, laughing, glowing. Right beside it, Alexandra had placed a new frame. A picture taken at the hospital 2 days earlier, Daniel lying in the bed, Mary asleep on his chest, Alexandra sitting on the side holding his hand. A family portrait they never got to take a decade ago. His throat tightened. He wasn't expecting it to hit this hard. From the kitchen, his name drifted to him. Dad, dinner. He walked back slowly, emotions caught in his chest. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt garlic. Alexandra stood there holding a wooden spoon like it was a weapon of war, eyes determined. Mary giggled. She insisted. Daniel took a seat carefully. Alexandra served the meal slightly overcooked pasta and sauce that tasted like determination more than actual flavor. But Mary loved it. And Daniel, chewing slowly, found himself smiling at the effort more than the taste. After dinner, the three of them settled in the living room. The mansion, once cold and silent, now buzzed softly with life, the rustle of pages as Mary flipped through a book, the sound of Alexandra cleaning up in the kitchen. Daniel's soft breaths as he rested on the couch. For the first time in forever, he didn't feel alone. Later, when Alexandra joined him on the couch, she didn't speak at first. She simply sat near him, not too close, not too far enough to let him choose the space between them. Daniel finally broke the silence. "This is a lot, I know," Alexandra whispered. "I don't expect you to get used to it overnight." He looked around the room. "It's not just the house. It's everything. You, Mary, the truth." He hesitated, then confessed, "I'm scared." Alexandra drew in a soft breath. "So am I." He turned to her, surprised. She continued, voice trembling, but honest. "I'm scared you'll never forgive me. I'm scared Mary will resent me. I'm scared of what my mother might do next. I'm scared of wanting too much." He studied her, the sincerity, the vulnerability, the strength beneath it. "I don't know what we are now," he said, "and I don't know what we'll be." She nodded. "But I know what I want us to try to be." She whispered. Daniel didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. Just then, Mary ran in holding her phone. "Mom, Dad." Look, both froze. "Mom." Daniel's breath stumbled. Alexandra's eyes filled instantly. Mary beamed innocently. "I saved your number as Mom today," she explained to Alexandra. "Is that okay?" Alexandra cupped Mary's cheek, her voice breaking. "Yes, sweetheart. It's more than okay." Daniel's jaw tightened, not in pain but in something achingly tender. His daughter had always been brave. This was just another proof. They settled again. Quiet, warm, alive. A family learning how to breathe together for the first time. Just as the evening settled into calm, a vibration buzzed through Alexandra's phone on the coffee table. She reached for it. Her mother. A new message. "I want to meet the girl. I'll come to your home tomorrow. This time, I won't fight. Please let me see her." Her heart dropped. Daniel leaned over to read the message, his expression tightening. He looked at her carefully, voice low. "Alexandra, what do you think we should do?" Morning arrived slower than usual at the Vale mansion. It didn't slip in through warm curtains or gentle birdsong. It pressed in heavy tense like the house itself sensed what was coming. Daniel sat at the dining table with a cup of weak hospital-approved tea, still adjusting to a world where he didn't have to count every pill or worry about the electricity being cut. His breathing was steadier, but the weight in his chest wasn't from illness. It was anticipation. Mary buzzed around the foyer, smoothing the skirt of her new dress, the one Alexandra had bought but let her pick. "Do I look okay?" she asked Daniel for the third time. He smiled softly. "You look perfect, honey." She beamed, but her excitement was threaded with nerves. Daniel could hear it in her voice. She wasn't afraid of meeting a grandmother, she was afraid of what she didn't know. Alexandra joined them, soon after, her expression calm, but her hands restless. She had barely slept. Not because she doubted her mother's sincerity, she doubted her stability. Catherine Vale was a storm contained in a teacup, and storms had a way of breaking whatever they touched. "Remember," Alexandra said gently, kneeling to Mary's level, "your dad and I will be with you the entire time, and if you don't want to talk, you don't have to." Mary nodded, gripping Alexandra's hand tightly. Daniel cleared his throat. Ground rules are clear: living room only 1 hour max. You have the right to ask her to leave at any point. Alexandra nodded. She agreed. But the worry in her eyes said I don't trust that she meant it. A knock echoed through the house. Slow, measuring, familiar in a way that made Alexandra's shoulders tense. Mary jumped slightly. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her back. Alexandra inhaled deeply. This was it. She walked to the door heels, tapping across the marble floor, a steady rhythm masking her quickening heartbeat. When she opened it, her mother stood there. Catherine Vale looked smaller than she ever had. Still poised, still elegant, but the edges of her power had softened. Her eyes, usually sharp as frost, held something uncertain. She held a single white envelope in one hand. Her voice was subdued. "May I come in?" Alexandra stepped aside. "This is our home now, not yours. You enter under that understanding." A flicker of pain crossed Catherine's face, but she nodded. Inside the living room, Mary stood politely, hands-clasped posture, slightly stiff. The child didn't know whether to bow, smile, or run. Catherine looked at her and froze. For the first time, the matriarch faltered openly. She stepped closer, then stopped as if afraid her presence would break the moment. "You," Catherine whispered, voice cracking. "You look just like your mother did at your age." Mary's breath caught. She glanced at Alexandra on instinct. Daniel stepped behind his daughter protectively, not controlling, not aggressive, just present. Catherine looked between the three of them and exhaled shakily. I owe you an apology," she said, staring at Mary but speaking to them all. "I failed all of you in ways I can't undo." Silence followed, heavy and fragile. Then Catherine turned to Mary fully, and for the first time in her long life of power and pride, her voice softened to something close to human. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that." She paused. "But I would like, if you let me, to try again, to know you, even just a little." Mary hesitated. She wasn't used to adults asking permission. Adults usually told her things, commanded her, dismissed her. So hearing this older woman, perfect hair, perfect clothes, trembling hands, ask, it struck her. Daniel gave her a little nod, letting her decide freely. Mary stepped forward one tiny step. "What's in the envelope?" she asked. Catherine blinked. "Oh." She looked down at it as if she'd forgotten it existed. "It's a letter. I wrote it last night. Everything I should have said 10 years ago, and everything you deserve to know." Mary took a slow breath. "Can I read it later?" "When I'm ready." Catherine nodded. "Of course." For a moment, something gentle passed between them, an almost invisible thread. "Would you like to sit?" Alexandra asked stiffly. Catherine nodded and sat on the very edge of the sofa as though afraid to sink into comfort she hadn't earned. Mary joined her, but only after situating herself close enough to her parents to feel safe. A delicate quiet settled. Then Mary asked softly, "Why did you do all that?" "To my mom and dad." Catherine flinched. Not a dramatic flinch, just a tightening around the eyes. "I was afraid," Catherine admitted. "I grew up believing love made people weak. I watched marriages crumble. I watched my own hopes collapse. And I thought, if I controlled enough things, I could stop life from hurting you." Alexandra whispered almost to herself. "You hurt me more than life ever could." Catherine's eyes shimmered. "I know," she said hoarsely. "And I am sorry, Alexandra. And I am sorry, Mary." Mary studied her face, searching for something. Maybe sincerity. Maybe remorse. Finally, she said with quiet bravery, "I don't know if I can forgive you yet. But," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "but maybe we can start with tea." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't acceptance. It was an opening. Catherine nodded quickly, emotion breaking through her composure. "I would like that. Very much." For the next half hour they all sat together, awkward, careful, fragile. But together. When Catherine finally stood to leave, she placed a hand over her heart. "Thank you for letting me meet her," she whispered. She turned to Daniel. "I can't undo what I did to you either." Daniel nodded. "You can start by not doing it again." Catherine swallowed hard. "I intend to." When she left the house, the air felt lighter, almost peaceful. Night came quietly, draping the house in warm amber light. Mary went to bed early, tired from emotions too big for her small frame. Daniel stepped into the backyard to get fresh air. Alexandra joined him a moment later, a soft knit blanket around her shoulders. In the gentle glow of garden lights, Daniel knelt down and unwrapped a small velvet box he had kept hidden for a decade. Alexandra gasped softly. He took her hand. 10 years ago, he said quietly, "I never got to ask you this." She covered her mouth, eyes instantly filling. Daniel looked up at her like she was still the girl he'd loved, but also the woman she'd become. "Alexandra Vale, will you give us a second chance? Will you marry me this time for real?" Her breath disappeared. Her knees weakened. Her heart finally came home. She whispered, trembling, "Daniel, yes." The garden had never looked like this before. Not 10 years ago, not even 10 days ago. Soft, golden lights hung from the branches like warm fireflies swaying gently in the early evening breeze. A narrow stone path led through the trimmed hedges toward a small clearing where rows of white chairs waited, simple, elegant, nothing extravagant. The air carried faint scents of fresh grass and warm tea candles, the kind of fragrance that made the world feel softer. And at the center of it all stood Mary, her hair brushed neatly, a little crown of baby's breath tucked above her ear. She clutched a tiny basket of petals in her hands and kept glancing toward the house as though waiting for a cue from the universe. Tonight wasn't just a wedding. It was a homecoming. Daniel Cole stood near the archway, adjusting his tie for the 4th time. The suit wasn't new, it was rented, carefully chosen by Alexandra's assistant, but he wore it with a quiet dignity that came from years of hardship and love. His breathing had steadied, his shoulders no longer hunched with fatigue. For the first time in a long time, he looked like a man not simply surviving, but living. Mary ran up to him and tugged his sleeve. "Dad, are you nervous?" Daniel smiled, smoothing her hair. "A little. Are you?" She shook her head with exaggerated confidence. "Nope. I've been practicing throwing petals all morning." Her boldness made him laugh, the warm, heartfelt kind he hadn't felt in years. "Then, I'd say we're both ready." Across the garden, guests began taking their seats. Only a few close friends, a couple of Alexandra's trusted colleagues, and one elderly neighbor from Daniel's old apartment who insisted on bringing homemade biscuits. And in the second row, sitting quietly with her purse held gently on her lap, was Catherine Vale. She was dressed simply, almost humbly. The usual sharpness in her posture had softened, replaced by something fragile and contemplative. When she met Daniel's gaze across the aisle, she offered a small nod, a peace offering, tentative but sincere. Daniel returned the gesture. Healing didn't erase the past, but it did make space for hope. The music began. Soft, warm, familiar. Mary gasped and hurried into position at the start of the aisle. She peeked down the pathway one last time and whispered to herself, "It's happening." She began walking, scattering petals, gently creating a path of pink and white. Her steps were light, almost floating, and for a moment she felt like the whole garden was breathing with her. Then the doors at the back of the house opened. Alexandra stepped out. Even the breeze seemed to pause. She wore a simple ivory dress that fell just below her ankles, elegant but unpretentious soft fabric that moved like quiet water around her legs. Her hair rested in gentle waves, pinned back just enough to reveal the peace and joy lighting her face. She wasn't dressed to impress a crowd. She was dressed for them, for Daniel, for Mary, and for the life they were building. Her eyes found Daniel's instantly, and in them he saw 10 years of love, unspoken grief carried, and courage rediscovered. When she reached the end of the aisle, Daniel took her hand. "Hi," he whispered. She smiled. "I've waited a long time for this." The officiant began speaking, but their attention was fixed only on each other, their breaths syncing their fingers, intertwined their pasts, finally settling into something gentler. Daniel cleared his throat when it was his turn to speak. "Alex." His voice wavered thick with emotion. 10 years ago, I thought I lost everything, my future, my heart, the family we never got the chance to be. I raised Mary with all the strength I had, but there were nights I held her while she slept and wondered why life had taken so much from us." He paused, breathing slowly. "But today, looking at you, I realize life didn't take everything. It saved something. It saved the chance for us to find each other again. And I promise you with everything I am, I won't waste this second chance." A small sob escaped from the second row. Catherine quickly covered her mouth. Alexandra took a breath before delivering her vow, her voice soft and trembling. "Daniel, I spent 10 years building an empire with a hollow heart. I spent 10 years believing lies that kept me from you, from our daughter, from the life I never stopped wanting. When I found Mary, when I saw that picture, something in me came back to life." She squeezed his hand. "You taught me what love feels like. Mary taught me what love becomes. And today, I promise to spend the rest of my life earning the family I lost, and cherishing the family I've been given back." Daniel wiped at his eyes. So did half the guests. And Mary, sniffling loudly, piped up from the front row, "Can I hug now, or do I wait?" The guests chuckled, the tension dissolving into gentle laughter. "You can hug now," the officiant said warmly. Mary sprinted forward and wrapped both her parents in an embrace that squeezed every broken piece back into place. The kiss came after soft, sweet, grounded in a decade's worth of longing. When they finally pulled apart, the applause rose around them like warm wind, filling the garden with a sound it had been starved of for too long joy. Later that night, the three of them sat on a blanket in the garden. Daniel leaned back on his elbows. Alexandra rested her head on his shoulder. Mary lay between them, tracing constellations in the sky with her finger. "Will we be like this forever?" Mary asked sleepily. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "We'll be a family forever," he whispered. "No matter what," Alexandra added softly. "And we'll make sure you always know how loved you are." Mary smiled and nestled deeper between them. On the porch, Catherine watched from a distance, not intruding, not dominating, just present. Trying, learning, hoping, a grandmother taking her first steps toward redemption. Inside the house, on the hallway shelf, the golden-framed photo of young Alexandra remained. But now, a second frame sat beside it, one taken earlier that day, Daniel, Alexandra, and Mary holding hands in the garden, laughing as petals fell around them. A family rebuilt, a life restored, a love reborn. Once I knocked on a silent mansion to sell a bag of oranges. I didn't know I was knocking on the door of my own family. Love can be buried, but it never dies. When the time is right, it always finds its way home. And before we say goodbye today, I want to leave you with a gentle reminder inspired by this story. Sometimes life takes us down roads we never planned to walk. Sometimes love gets buried under years of misunderstanding, silence, or pain. But, as we just witnessed, love has a way of finding its way home. Not perfectly, not easily, but truthfully. And that kind of love, the kind that survives distance, time, and heartbreak, is the love that reminds us we're never truly alone. If today's story touched you, if it stirred something deep inside, if it reminded you of a moment when your life changed because of compassion, forgiveness, or an unexpected second chance, share your story with us. Maybe you've lived something similar. Maybe you've witnessed a healing between people who once thought everything was lost. Your experience might be the message someone else out there needs to hear today. And before you head out, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Our community is filled with listeners from around the world, and your presence truly matters here. If you enjoyed today's journey, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts and bring more light into someone's day. Thank you, truly, for spending your time with me. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for believing in the kind of stories that remind us all of the goodness still left in this world. Until next time, take care of yourself, and take care of the people you love.